Hi, welcome to the GroundWorks Media Conversion Lab. My name is Jake. I'm a consultant here, and today I'll be showing you how to use our DV decks to transfer your tape to a hard drive using QuickTime, iMovie 09, Final Cut Pro 7, and Adobe Premiere CS4. Let's get started. So you have a tape and you'd like to get it onto the computer. The first thing you have to do is properly set up the deck. First, make sure the deck is on. Next, check that the display output switch is in the middle S-Video video position. After that, press the menu button and the menu will pop up on the screen. Select the In-Out Rec menu by pressing either the Exec or Right button. Next, select the HDV DV cell submenu and choose either HDV for HDV video or DV for standard definition video. Then press the Exec button. Finally, press the menu button to exit the menu. It's important that you know what format your video is, since all the settings in whichever program you use will eventually need to match. If you aren't getting video, it's likely that the format of your tape and the settings in the deck don't match. Now that the deck is properly configured, let's take a look at how to set up the software to properly capture your video. We'll start with QuickTime, since it's the simplest of the four applications we'll be looking at. Go ahead and perform a spotlight search for QuickTime by either pressing Command and then Spacebar, or by clicking the magnifying glass in the upper right. As I begin to type QuickTime, the player comes up highlighted. I'm just going to press Return to open the program. Once it starts, click on QuickTime Player and then Preferences. Click the Recording tab, the logo is this camcorder, and make sure that the video source and the microphone are both set to HDV VCR. Also, check to make sure the quality is set to device native and choose a location for your video where it says Save Files To. Close this window and go to File and then New Movie Recording. Finally, click the record button in the window that opens and you've begun to capture your video. Once you're finished, just press stop and QuickTime will have made a new file of your footage in the location you selected. Next, we're going to look at iMovie. iMovie is very easy to use and a good introduction to working with video if you're not interested in doing very complicated editing or processing. The first thing you'll need to do is to open iMovie. I'll just do another spotlight search for iMovie and hit return when it pops up. Now that iMovie is open, you'll notice a camera icon on the left-hand side. Click this icon and a new window will open that says Import from DVVCR DV. Notice the switch in the lower left corner of the window. This lets you choose between an automatic and manual import. An automatic import will rewind your tape and capture all of the footage. If you only want to capture a portion of your footage, a manual import is the way to go. I'm going to go ahead and switch this into manual mode. Notice that a panel of playback controls pops up. You can use these to control the playback of the tape. When your tape is queued up to the right spot, you can click Import. In both modes, when you click Import, this menu pops up, giving you options for where you want to store the files and what event you want them added to. I'm going to write these to the temporary storage drive, but if you have an external drive, you are welcome to select that and put them directly on there. I'm going to make a new event called Jake Dances for GroundWorks. Now I'll just click Import, and we're off. Once I've finished my jig, I just hit stop and voila, the footage is on the drive. Now let's take a look at Adobe Premiere Pro. Premiere is much more powerful and sophisticated than iMovie. It can do all the things that Final Cut can do, but in a different interface. One advantage of Premiere over Final Cut is that it can be used across platforms. So if you use a Mac and you're collaborating with a Windows user, or if you prefer PC, Premiere lets you work in both operating systems. Go ahead and spotlight Premiere and hit return. Once it opens, a dialog appears in which you will create a new project. After you click New Project, a new window will open in which you can specify a number of settings for your project. Make sure your capture format is set to HDV. The rest of Premiere's default settings are fine for capturing video, so there's no need to change anything else in this window. Click the Scratch Disks tab to set a location for your scratch disks. Notice that the path for each capture scratch is defaulted to same as project, meaning that they will be set to the same location as your project. So, to keep things simple, I'm going to go ahead and create a location for my project at the bottom of this window so that everything will be in the same place. I'll just click the Browse button, navigate to the temporary storage drive, create a new folder called Jake Dances for GroundWorks, and click Choose to set this as my project location. If you're new to video editing, it's worth getting familiar with how the program organizes your project and its files. When you edit footage in a program like Premiere or Final Cut Pro, which we'll get to in a minute, the sequencing and editing occurs in a referential manner, meaning that you don't actually alter your original footage, but rather you move and process a reference of it in a representational timeline. Imagine, if you will, that you are building a birdhouse. You have your wood, nails, and paint, but no plan for what to do with them. You know the amount of material you have, and you have a vague picture of how it will all fit together, but you can't start building until you perfect your blueprint. Your blueprint offers you infinite flexibility in planning, designing, and outlining measurements that you will reference throughout the build to ensure that the house ends up looking like you planned. Without your blueprint, you're at a loss for what to do with your materials, and without your materials, you can't build your birdhouse. This is very similar to how video editing software works, where your project file is like a blueprint of where all your video files belong in time. The project file does not contain any materials or footage. Instead, it is more like a mock-up of where your footage belongs, and any editing and manipulating you do gets stored, like a blueprint, as information about your footage, but does not alter your original video in any way. It is essential that you properly configure your scratch disks before you start capturing footage. Without properly setting up your scratch disk, you could end up leaving GroundWorks with your blueprint but not your materials, i.e., a project file with a killer sequence of your video files, but no video files to go along with it. So now that I've properly set my scratch disk, I'm going to title my project Jake Dances for GroundWorks and click OK. Now we get a new window in which we'll set our sequence presets to match our video quality and settings on the mini DV deck. The two folders you'll need to worry about are the DV NTSC folder and the HDV folder. If your footage is HD, select HDV 1080i30 60i from the HDV folder. If your footage is SD, choose one of the standard presets from the DV NTSC folder. The number after standard refers to the sampling rate of your audio. This should be displayed in the lower right-hand corner of the DV playback screen. Make sure the displayed sampling rate matches the preset in Premiere. For this, I'm going to choose HDV, since my dance is in full high-definition glory, and I'm going to name my sequence Jake Dance, after the new move I just invented. I'm going to click OK, and Premiere will open my new project. Now that the project is set up and ready to go, I'm going to capture my footage. To do this, click on File and then Capture. A new window will open that has some playback controls at the bottom. Notice the tabs in the upper left. Click on the Settings tab to check that your device control settings are properly configured. Make certain that the device is set to DV/HDV device control. Click the Options button and a dialog opens up with a number of settings. For our decks, the device brand is Sony, and the device type can be set to standard. Make sure the video standard matches the standard of your tape, which will most likely be NTSC. You can leave the timecode format on auto detect. The device should be online. If not, click the Check Status button to rescan. When everything is properly configured, the window will display either footage or a message that says Previewing on camera. In this latter case, anything displayed on the square screen above the deck shows what is being sent to the computer. From here on out, we'll use the controls in Premiere to play back from the deck. Cue your tape up to the beginning of what you want to capture using the transport controls at the bottom of the window. You can scan your video with the fast forward and rewind buttons or with the shuttle slider. You can also move around more finely with either the step buttons or the jog wheel. Once you've queued up to the beginning of the section you want to capture, go ahead and hit the record or the tape button. When you've reached the end of the portion you want, click the stop button and name your new clip. Now you know all you need to capture footage in Premiere. The last program we'll be looking at today is Final Cut Pro. Final Cut is a very powerful editing platform that can do pretty much anything you've seen in a major motion picture. In fact, many Hollywood pictures are edited in Final Cut. Open Final Cut using the Spotlight. Now, if you've properly set up your deck, as in all of the programs we've looked at, this should be a relatively familiar and straightforward process. Once you've opened up Final Cut, click Final Cut Pro in the menu bar and then click Easy Setup. Format and Rate should read all formats and all rates respectively. The setting we're interested in is the Use setting. Right now it's set to DV NTSC, which would work great if my footage were in SD. However, my dance is so important, I needed to shoot it in full HD quality. So I'm going to set my Use to HDV 1080 I60. After I click Setup, I need to quit Final Cut and then open it up again to make sure my settings become properly enabled. When Final Cut opens back up, go to Final Cut Pro and then to System Settings to set your scratch discs. Remember the importance of this step, as this is what will link your blueprint with your birdhouse. Once again, I'm going to set these to the Jake Dances for GroundWorks folder on the temporary storage drive. In Final Cut, I need to make sure that my waveform catch, thumbnail catch, and autosave vault locations match as well. Once these are all set, I'm going to click OK. Next, go up to File and click on Log and Capture. Finally, when this window opens, click the Now button in the capture box and you're off. Well, I hope this explains everything you need to know. If you have further questions, feel free to ask me or another one of our consultants at the desk. You can also view the lynda.com tutorials by clicking the link on the desktop. Have fun capturing your footage.
Sweet.